I stood on a high, gloomy shore, looking at the dark river that twisted like a serpent among the brooding pine forest. The branches of the trees moved restlessly, as if they sensed my presence and did not welcome it. The water of the river was murky and lifeless, as if nature itself had turned its back on this place. No sunlight glinted off the surface, no fish jumped, just a quiet, silent current pulling everything into an unexplored depth. Only long, withered strands of aquatic plants forlornly stuck out of the water, reminding of times when people still lived here. Nearby, an old, rotting boat lay upside down, resembling the skeletal remains of some long-dead creature. Everything around was frozen in time with no hint of life. I had crossed an invisible boundary, a line where another world begins, a world where time had stopped. Immerse. A dreamer? A trespasser? Probably all of the above. But there is no way back. The boat has left and now I face what lies ahead. The journey will be long, full of stops and guides. But I must go on, there is no turning back. And yet I know I should not be here. It doesn't matter whether I have the documents, for it's something else, what has driven me all these years. It will not let go, will not quiet down until I see with my own eyes what I fear the most. But there is no choice. I must move forward step by step. Under the dense branches of the fir trees, checking my map and compass, I pressed on, feeling the cold that penetrated to the bone. The forest filled the air with the scent of pine and damp earth, but this familiar aroma seemed alien, sinister. The tall firs reached toward the sky like claws, and there was something wrong about their shape. Little saplings twisted in strange poses, and some stood as dead skeletons. The mud squished under my boots and the stiff, dark grass stood out like needles. What happened to this forest? An autumnal hibernation? No, this is not about autumn. The moment when the world changed was left behind, shrouded in the mists of time. Spring, the sole, ominous, cursed spring, had extended its tendrils here to this place. A dry crackle in my jacket pocket served as a reminder. I took out a small box, the Geiger counter. Here, this device is essential for anyone who dares to enter, regardless of their purpose. The radioactive background spares no one, neither the wicked nor the good. On the world map, this place is merely a dot, a pitiful 30 kilometers. But look closer and suddenly you realize how vast that dot is. Inside this cursed ring are two cities. One still barely breathes, the other has long been dead. Nearby, there are dozens of villages that were not yet leveled to the ground. Many stories have been told about these places, hundreds of tales, legends and memories. Some were told with tearful chokes, others spoke quietly without epithets or drama. The truth lies somewhere in between, the bitterness, the cold, and the relief that it hasn't gotten any worse. And over it all hangs one word, dark and bitter as wormwood. That word is Chernobyl. The sun is not visible here. Only gray skies and clouds stretching into the distance. The silence is oppressive, only the wind howls somewhere at the edge of consciousness, and the fallen leaves rustle underfoot. I am not alone. My guides are hidden ahead, knowing every path. They are not afraid or they hide their fear deep inside. For them it's a job, a trade, and they make a decent living from it. But even they understand, this place is forsaken by God and man, and the way back will never be the same. But who else inhabits this forsaken place? Our lesser brethren. Somewhere in the shadowy woods, wild animals roam, birds fly, unknowing fear, boundaries, or the radioactive patches that bring death. Nature here, despite its wildness, continues to live, as if tenderly embracing this desolate land, returning it to itself. But people are not welcome here. Only those who could not leave their homeland remain, who have lived here until old age. The old people who have no other place to go. Even the grave cold here seems less frightening to them. Better to lie in the native soil than rot in a foreign land. The further I went, the more my anxiety grew. Each step brought me closer to the goal, but my legs seemed unresponsive. Fear tightened my chest, bringing ominous premonitions. Although it seemed like I was going the right way, familiar landmarks, a gnarled log, moss-covered stones, a ravine. And then the yellow-red radiation hazard sign, already covered in rust. Somewhere around here should have been a camp, grim-faced guys in khaki jackets. But all that remained were a cold campfire and a crumpled cigarette pack. The guides had left, not waiting for me. And there is no certainty that I will meet them ahead. Have they abandoned me? The thought flashed through my mind and my hand reached for the radio. I remembered the frequency for broadcasting, the call signs and passwords. But in response, there was only sharp, hissing static. I needed to pull myself together. Calm down, take a deep breath. Reach the city and surrender to the patrol. That's fate. That's how it was meant to be. But my plans fell apart like a house of cards in an instant. An invisible, indistinct something touched me, paralyzing, distorting perception, making the world blur before my eyes. A shiver passed through my body, a disgusting squeal filled my ears, replaced by a monotonous hum. A mix of smells pressed against my throat with nausea. Time seemed to freeze and my heart slowed down. Another attack. The pills don't help, but usually it passes on its own. Yet today something had changed. From the depths of my nightmares, from fragments of strange dreams, a black figure emerged, slowly appearing from behind the trees. It had no scythe, but it approached me, stepping silently, gaining increasing reality with each step. A dark robe, a dirty mask tied under the chin. The face was indistinguishable, but the hands were visible, thin, bony, covered with wrinkled skin. The figure stopped in front of me, slowly removing the hood. Underneath was nothing terrifying, no skull, no emptiness. Just an ordinary old face, lined with wrinkles, gray hair gathered in a neat bun. But the eyes, such eyes do not belong to humans. Around the pupils burned an orange light, as if a tiny flame flickered in each of them. What does it want? Who is it? Will it answer my questions? I didn't have time to open my mouth before the voice sounded from all sides, sly but not threatening. Everything has its time. But since you are here, it means your time has come. For both me and you. It was meant to happen. I didn't know what to say but nodded, in a sign of respect. Do you want to know who I am? Simple, but it will be hard to believe. Better see for yourself. Open your eyes wider, fear should not cloud your mind. The old woman grabbed my hand, and in that instant the world around us changed. We were above the ground, floating in the air like strange birds, silently gliding over the river. Below yawned a vast pit, around which machines and tiny people bustled. The contours blurred, the space bent and flowed, as if the world was trying to take on a new form. Now walls were rising here, roofs appearing. A tall striped chimney grew quickly, as if someone was fast-forwarding time. Days turned into nights, lights glowed, forests rustled on the horizon. And then, a bright flash, blinding to the point of pain. The disaster has already happened. The footage from old newsreels comes to life before my eyes. People with shovels on the dangerously exposed roof, leaden dump trucks, long-armed cranes and concrete pumps. The massive sarcophagus structure grows before my eyes, slowly but relentlessly. How much more dangerous and crucial work remains off camera, hidden from the eyes of outsiders? Another flash. The pipe is gone, and above the ruined building stands a new, gleaming dome. A shelter for frozen death. Without a doubt, this is the very place where it all began. But what happens next? I lived my life and it was short. Too short. If someone says that I remain the same. Yes and no. I am almost harmless again, but how many curses follow me, how much evil that is foreign to my nature. I am the station. Chernobyl nuclear. And I have been waiting for you. What? We will walk this path again together. No matter how hard it is. It is necessary for all of us. Pain and weight are our memories, they must be awakened. Otherwise they will wither and gather dust. We cannot allow that. This cannot be. I am delirious. The scientists said the same. Both before and after. They had their limits. I believed in them, but I doubt they believed in my special existence. Do you think spirits live only in old legends? No, we are born in new times too. Where there is space and power. A place of power. Somewhere in the north and south live my sisters. They are healthy and they have no bad reputation. Well, they are much luckier than I am. Tell me, do you love people? Well, it depends on which ones. I love them all. No matter who they were. They gave me life and I gave them light and warmth. Could I harm them? Condemn them to death? Never. But it still happened. They needed more energy. But it became too much, uncontrollable. The station waved her hand, and the sky suddenly darkened. Amidst the darkness, a fire erupted, and acrid ash, driven by a fierce wind, pelted the ground. We returned to that April night of 1986, a night that split life into before and after. A terrible wound burns on the body of the station. Inside, people bustle about. In their eyes, there is horror and confusion, but amidst it, they find the strength for feats. There will be no many deaths here. Only one unfortunate person who will never be found, will remain forever in the depths of the station. His injured colleague will die a little later in the hospital of the city of Pripyat. Tanya, come here quickly, we have an atomic fire. What about Unit 4? Pripyat? Hello. Hello. The airwaves explode with alarming messages, commands filled with panic and despair. A disaster has occurred. With the wail of sirens and bright flashes of strobe lights, red and white vehicles, heavy Ural and ZL trucks speed through the streets. I see them dispersing across the area, firefighters unwinding hoses at breakneck speed, preparing to rush into the inferno. The heat is unbearable, stifling as if the very earth breathes fire. None of them think about radiation. The fire demands immediate action. Their shift will end and everyone will leave this hellish circle, return home. But Kybnak, Pravik, Titnok, Vashtura, Ignatenko, and Vashchuk will have only a few weeks left to live. A bright morning seems to wash away all the night's nightmares, illuminating the vast, seemingly untouched city, its straight streets, green avenues. There is neither devastation nor annoying advertisements, nor cars on the roads at this early hour. Everything looks as if life goes on. We walk with the station. She shows me the city, and in every corner, sweet nostalgia is born, a ghost of a time I never knew but which lives in memory as fragments of the past. Pripyat. The city seemed to embody the Soviet dream, shining with newness and aimed at a bright future that never came. The city seems to be sleeping, immersed in a deep morning slumber as it did on the last Saturday of April and many years before that. But now it will never wake again. This is the first summer after the disaster. The air is deceptively fresh, but not a single bird can be heard. There will be none for long. For a moment, time rolls back and I see buses rolling through the streets, filled with people like a farewell procession. The residents look out the windows, unaware that they are saying goodbye to their familiar life forever. They will be scattered across the world, and their sorrows will be immeasurable. With each step, the cold inside me grows. There's something familiar about this abandoned, overgrown city, reminiscent of our time. The ruins are frightening, but not as much as this city that just yesterday was alive, unaware that its destruction was inevitable, that it could not be saved. Here, of course, service trucks and buses marked zone will still pass by, and decontamination workers in white helmets and masks will walk the streets. They will believe they can defeat the heavy isotopes by washing the streets and cleaning the contaminated soil. But schools will remain empty, unwanted goods will pile up in stores, and at night no one will turn on the lights in the many apartments. Soon a group catches up with us. Scruffy stray cats and dogs follow behind. Some came here later, others managed to survive the brutal purges. Who could have thought that their fur would collect radiation, that they would become carriers of hot particles? And no one will care that these creatures want to live too. On the children's playground, among twisted swings and rusty merry-go-rounds, we suddenly encounter a girl. She is beautiful and young, like everything around her, still untouched by decades of oblivion. A bright yellow dress, sandals, a small bag on her shoulder. A red flower shines in her slightly greenish hair. Her eyes, with an orange hue, look at us and she waves her hand in greeting. But in her gaze, there is a sadness, heavy and unbearable, just like the whole city dying before our eyes. Recognize it? Here it is, Pripyat, my little daughter. Don't be sad, dear. At least smile once. Look who has come to us. He is here for a reason. What joy now? Pripyat whispered softly, her voice echoing off the empty buildings. I am orphaned. Without you, mother, without my residence. All so dear, so familiar. And the children. How wonderful those children were. She spun around on a rusty merry-go-round, her figure almost merging with the shadow. Who will laugh now? Who will play with toys? Her face contorted with pain and tears shone in her eyes. But they were not held back, and the girl covered her face with her hands, trying to hide her despair. And then the unkind will come. Rude, cold, soulless. Her voice broke into sobs. The sky above us suddenly turned gray, contracting, and around us snowdrifts grew, enormous as walls. Predatory icicles hung from the roofs like sharp claws. The windows of the buildings turned into black voids, and the streets became even more deserted. Only rare patrol cars and angular radiation reconnaissance vehicles cut through the icy silence. The wind whipped mercilessly, and the girl stood in the same spot, shivering from the cold. Her light dress was no longer suitable for the harsh weather, and this made her fragile figure seem even more defenseless. But cold was not her main fear. They are already close, she whispered, looking towards the city. These evil people. They will come for what's left, for what can be taken away. They won't leave anything, they will take everything. The station shifted time again, and now we stand amidst a familiar yet still foreign landscape. It's our era once more. The Ferris wheel looms above us, like a grim symbol of lost hopes, having never had the chance to bring joy to its residents. And Pripyat cried. Her mother, the station, comforted her, trying to hold back her own tears, but they still ran down her wrinkled face. How different these two souls are. She's always 16, I whispered, looking at the girl. The city may age, its walls may crumble, but its spirit remains youthful, unwilling to accept inevitability. And you, station. You have been tortured by pain and grief, and you have accepted it. I approached them, unable to hold back a tear, and simply took their hands. I am with you. Always with you. You are not dead to me. No matter how scared I am, I will not be able to forget you. You waited for me, called me, and I came. If I find a way, I will turn back time and fix everything. Romantic? Pripyat sighed, her voice sounding sad and a little tired. Like all of us, like all our generation, added the station. And what's interesting is that the faith in progress remains, but the faith in spirits has not weakened. Mom, maybe you'll give him a sign? You said yourself that it was necessary, that this day would come. Go ahead, nodded the station. It's with you. Pripyat, hesitating slightly, began to search through her elegant handbag. Finally, she pulled out a small object that immediately caught my attention. It was a miniature atom, glowing with a soft bluish light. She handed it to me and I instinctively stepped back a pace. Don't be afraid, the girl said gently, her voice like a psalm. It's not dangerous. It's a symbol, a thing of power. And this power will now be with you. Thank you. But why me? Why such a reward? For remembering us, answered Pripyat, her eyes shining with an orange light. For not forgetting those who sought our salvation. Most of what you saw today in the whirlwind of time exists only because of your memory. It's easier for us now. What? I wish I understood. You must have a gift. The zone called him. He came and endured the trial, added the station. But I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one in pain. But it was you who needed to be here today. You knew it, you felt it, and you came on your own. The call only strengthened your resolve. And what now? I asked, feeling the weight of the moment. Part 6. Now time. We need to visit a few more places. And then you'll return, said the station, her voice sounding like a distant bell, foretelling the inevitable. Today I'll start the wheel. Pripyat suddenly exclaimed, her voice ringing with lively notes. Will you take a few spins with us? Will it work? I asked, not hiding my doubts. It will, she replied, her smile a full mystery. We approached the Ferris wheel, rusty and abandoned, towering over the city like a frozen witness of the past. But suddenly, as if by magic, it slowly creaked, coming to life after a long sleep. The cabins, long forgotten how it felt to bear weight, were now preparing to receive us. In the small cabin at the top, it was cramped and stuffy. But the view before us was worth it. The city lay beneath us like an open book, spread out in silence. And in the distance, like a dark spot on the horizon, the station was visible, so different from the one I knew. Pripyat began to sing. Her voice was soft, but it carried so much pain that it seemed to cut through the very fabric of time. Her song was filled with sorrow, echoes of a lost past, and a barely perceptible, almost intangible hope. It was the song of a dying city clinging to life, even when everything around it is already predetermined. I rubbed my eyes, trying to convince myself that this was just a dream, a nightmare from which I would soon wake. I pinched my elbows, but reality did not disappear. Even when I found myself again on the riverbank, alone amidst the quiet and eerie emptiness, the sense of unreality did not let go. And soon I understood why. In the right pocket of my jacket, the Chernobyl gift still glowed, a tiny atom emitting a soft, barely perceptible light. This token, this symbol, was with me as a reminder of what I had seen, of what I had endured. Chernobyl had left its mark on me, and I knew it would stay with me forever.